Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to another episode of Grumpa's Garage. And remember, what happens in the garage stays in the garage. So it's been a minute, as always, between work, computer work, teaching work, homework, housework, kid work, family work, all that other sort of stuff. It's been a wild year for us, but back at it. So I've spent some time over the past few months out here working on the car. I'm sorry I've not recorded it, but I'll give you an update. We've got the car back on the ground. It is an 86 Camaro Sport Coupe, for those of you who don't remember. I've upgraded the front sway bars to 36 millimeter sway bars. The rear sway bars have been upgraded to, I think it's 26 millimeter. With both of them have new bushings, new sway links, new everything all around. Basically, the whole suspension on the car has been upgraded. Lowering springs, new shocks, new struts, all this stuff. So the car sits nice. It's nice and low. It's got a good stance to it. So what I'm about to do tonight is hopefully the last part to get the car up and running. So I've got everything in, and now because I switched, well, let me show you. Hang on a second. Let's wander over here. Here is the original 305 engine sitting on an engine stand. And this engine sat so long, the seals and everything were dried out in it. I've talked about it before. And it was just done. So, but what this engine did have down here was, that's where a mechanical fuel pump was mounted. Now, the new engine I put in does not have a mechanical fuel pump. So what I'm putting in is, if we come over here, I'm going to mount this electric inline fuel pump. So this will sit under the car, back just beside the gas tank, and push fuel up to the engine. At which point it will be going to a regulator with a return line that goes back to the engine to bleed off the extra fuel, and then the fuel coming in will go straight to the carburetor, and it'll go through two pressure regulators as well, so I can meter the amount of fuel and fuel pressure going into the engine. So I'll show you that in a few minutes. But what we've got is, and I'm going to do some shout outs to some different brands here, but I've got a Mega Flint low pressure fuel pump here. So it goes from, I think, 5 to 7 pounds or 4 to 9 pounds. So it's for low pressure carbureted engines. I've got these MGI relays. So I'm going to run it off a fuel relay up in the engine bay. And these relays are nice because it's actually got all the wiring goes into a mount, and then the removable relay, which is fused here. And all the instructions and everything for it are here, so I know which wires to hook up to what. And then, of course, I've got my wire kit. It's all the different kinds of wire that I picked up. My bullet connectors. I've got these rings for the fuel lines. And then, of course, all my different sizes of shrink wrap for the wires and such. And then all my other gear. So we're going to get at this. We're going to wire this thing up hopefully tonight. I'm not sure if I'll get it mounted, but I'll at least get it wired. Oh, and then one more thing, just to show you, just as a safety precaution, even though I've got it on a relay, and if there's any kind of power issues, it will shut off with the relay. But I'm also putting in, or I have put in, sorry, this safety switch. So the fuel pump will not run unless that is turned on. So it's a bit of a theft control and safety switch together, and hopefully everything will run tickety-boo. I've also got the interior of the car back together. So everything is back in place with the exception of the button on the safety brake there. But everything else is back in place and together and ready to button up. Okay, let's get under the car and I'll show you where I'm going to mount this thing. Hold tight. All right, folks, I'm down here under the car. You can kind of see I've got the drive shaft out right now, because the other thing I did was I put in all new emergency parking brake cables. So off to the left and right sides, you can see here. While we're down here, I can show you. There's my buddy. There he is. There's the new sway bar links. So I've got the new sway bar links. This bar that goes from side to side with the new bushings, new poly bushings and such, and the new gas struts, you can see. So and also the different lowering springs. are in place. So a little bit of surface rust underneath, but this is all just surface stuff, just from the car being so old. But it's the rest of the frame and the car and everything is rust free, with the exception of this one spot that I patched underneath one of the seats. Other than that, we're in good shape. Now, the fuel pump. What I have, again, I showed you, is this Mega Flint fuel pump. And this has to mount close to the engine, and it also has to mount in such a way that the inlet is lower than the outlet, because what happens is it sucks the fuel and pushes it to the engine. So it's got to be as close to the fuel tank as possible. And by mounting the outlet higher than the inlet, what it does is it allows the pump to always stay primed. So it'll never run low on fuel, or run empty, I should say. So what I'm going to do is, if you look up in here, let's just turn this around. Excuse me, sorry about the tight space down here. There's the fuel pump, and this, adjacent to it, is the back wall. So this wall here sits behind the passenger seats in the back. So all I'm going to do is take this fuel pump and mount it right here on this back wall. And I will loop the fuel lines so it comes down and into the bottom inlet, pushes it up and out, and then back down through these fuel lines and runs it right up to the front of the car. All right, easy. And then, of course, there's the wiring on the fuel pump, which I will connect to that cutoff switch up in the dash of the car. All right, so that's it. So let me get at it. I'm going to stop this, and we'll head back up to the engine bay. All right, all. We've been out here for a bit, so let's show you where we're at. All right, let's take a look at things. So I know you've seen this before, but this is the the business end of the car. So let's take a look at what I've done with the wiring. So I have wired everything into a relay and an accessory box. Now, for anybody who's not really sure what a relay does, you've all heard about your relays on your cars. You've got relays for the wipers, for the headlights, for your fuel pump, for all your accessories. And a relay is essentially a switch that when you apply power to it, it turns on. When you remove the power, it turns off, instead of running power directly to an accessory. And that way, if there's an overload, it blows the relay instead of actually blowing the motor on your wipers or blowing out your headlights or whatever. It just you've got a relay and a fuse, and it's just sort of an on-off safety mechanism that helps to run things smoothly. So let's take a look at what I've done. There's 4 wires on a relay. I've got a positive wire run off the alternator directly to, you can't see it, but directly into the relay at the bottom. And then I've got a ground wire from the relay run over to here, and I've got everything tucked in nice and clean, so it looks neat. And then what you've got on the relay is a signal switch. So I've got another wire that's come over here. You can't see it, but this I've got a small wire run out the bottom, comes all the way down through here and down into the wheel well and over into the car, that yellow wire right there. And that's called the signal switch. And that is what turns on a signal to the relay. So when the signal switch inside the car is turned on, that allows it to pass power through. That allows it to pass the power all the way through and down to the fuel pump, which also will run down under the car. Okay, and that switch, the power from that switch, is your key on power. So normally you would run it right to your ignition. So when you turn your key on, it sends a signal to that switch and it sends power off to the fuel pump. But I've put a kill switch inside as well, so I can manually turn it on and off. Okay, so there's 4 wires on a relay. You've got your direct power, your direct ground, your signal wire, and then your accessory power. So the only one right now that's not hooked up is my accessory power. I have not put the fuel pump in the back of the car yet, and this red wire right here is the one that will go to it. Okay, so for any questions, there is what a relay looks like. You've got number 86 is your ground, number 30 is your direct power source, 85 goes to the switch with your signal wire, and then 87 up at the top goes directly out to the accessory. So anyways, I've got this thing wired in. They are confusing. Not a lot of people like working with relays, but I don't mind. And then what I've got is an accessory panel there. So the direct power to the alternator actually comes into the accessory panel and then out here over to the relay. So what that means is I can actually run a bunch of different accessories here in the car if I were to hook up like fog lights or you know, some other power adding toys. I can just run them right off of this here in the engine bay instead of having to wire them all up into the dash and such. Okay, so let's take a look at things and let's see if this thing actually works. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my shelf and get my trusty multimeter. So my multimeter will sit right here, and I'm going to hook up a ground wire. My black ground wire will come over to, oh, I have to move the multimeter, I guess. Not quite enough length. So I'm going to hook my ground wire just up to a metal source here. Okay, so I have ground. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up my positive wire to this lead, which will go to the fuel pump. And I'm going to set it right here so it's not actually touching any metal. Okay, it's just sitting on this hose. Now, let's turn on the power to the car. So I've got my kill switch for the battery is here. And you can see we now have lights. We have power to the car. Okay, and I'll turn on the multimeter. A multimeter is just a fancy tool for measuring all kinds of things. I can measure whether there's current going through anything, the amps, all kinds of voltages, being like your household outlets, your wall outlets, and things that use batteries like cars and toys and such. So let's turn it on. And right now, there is no power going through that line. So that's good. Absolutely no power going to the fuel pump. And that's because the key to the car is turned off. And I've also got the kill switch. So let's go over into the car for a second. Let's find the keys. Where did I set the keys? Oh, never mind. Lost the keys. Here's the keys. Check this. I still have the original keychain from 1986. All right, let's put the keys in. Watch, we have power, the battery. All right, the voltage gauge went up. Keys are in, the ignition is on. If we come back here, I still have no power to that fuel pump. And that is good. Normally there would be power to it, except, like I said, I put a kill switch. So that fuel pump will not come on until I flip this up and I hit that switch. Now let's go check it. We now have 9.6 volts. Now, that would normally read about 12 or 13 volts going through there, but I've got my battery run down a little bit. I have to put it on the charger. It's been sitting for a while. So, what that means though, as soon as I turn that switch on, I would hear a hum to the fuel pump and it would begin sending fuel all the way up here into my into my fuel regulator, across and into the carburetor in the engine. I turn the key another notch, it cranks, and the engine should start. So that's it, folks. I am ready to install the fuel pump, and at that point, get some fluids in this thing, and it should be ready to start. All right. I will come back to it tomorrow night. Thanks. Good night. Onto the car. Let's have a final look at things. I've got the fuel pump installed. Everything is up and running, and let's have a look. So you can see the wire running along the fuel lines right from the front of the car. It's kind of dark down here, but I ran in a wire loom about 3 feet short, so I'll get some more of that. But I did zip tie it all along, and if you look up here, where is it? There is the fuel pump. So I've got the fuel line comes off the top. Comes off the top, loops down here into the bottom of the fuel pump, and then it comes off the top of the fuel pump, back down, and into the hard line here, and all the way to the front of the car. So I don't, sorry, it's kind of hard to see down here, but there it is. But by doing it this way, the fuel comes into the bottom and it keeps the pump primed. And then the pump pushes it up the top into the front. There are different types of fuel pumps. There's puller pumps, which would mount up front and suck the fuel from the tank all the way up front, versus these type, which are called pushers. So that's exactly what they do. They have to mount to the tank or close to the tank, and then they push the fuel all the way to the front. All right, so let's go up front and take a look. Okay, now that we're out from under the car, let's just do a quick check and make sure this fuel pump is delivering fuel and we get a bit of fuel pressure. So first thing we'll do is we'll come over here and I'm going to turn on the battery power. Sure enough, we have power. Light comes on. Awesome. Okay, we're going to come over here, just double check, make sure my fuel fittings are tight. I had that loose earlier, so that is on good. Okay, I did take the breather off so I can see down inside the bowls and just double check that we're not getting fuel in there at the moment. So let's take a look. Oh, just so we're clear, I did wire the fuel pump. As I mentioned, I wired it into the relay and I kept the wiring as clean as possible. You can see I've got that wire loom goes right across the back of the engine and down this side of the car. So it looks as close to stock as possible. I did not want a bird's nest of wires or anybody accusing me of being some, backyard electrician when it comes to the car. So everything looks pretty darn clean in there, I think. So anyways, let's go over here. Remember, I have the kill switch and the ignition. So let's just reach down here. I'm going to put the key in the ignition. Now that we have power. Now, let's turn it to accessory. Okay, so we now have accessory mode is on. And the fuel pump does not come on until I do this. See if we can hear it. Awesome. Fuel pump comes on. So let's go back up here. Let's take a look. We have no leaks, which is good. I've got this one gauge here, seems to be defective. It's not working. But if we come over here and I look at this gauge, I'm getting between 5 and 6 pounds of pressure in the carburetor. So we are getting fuel, and I can see that my my fuel filter here is full of fuel. So that is good news. That's awesome news. So that's the end of this video. Next steps, next video, I'm going to do a quick tune on the carburetor. So we'll check the float bowl levels. We'll check and make sure that we're not getting fuel in there until we actually hit the accelerator pedal so it's not flooding out. And then we'll get some fluids in this thing and we will see if we can get it started. All right. Thanks all and have a great night. Cheers.